Welcome to A Day in the Life. I'm your host, Darren Bloomfield. Today I'm joined by Billy Smoller. Welcome, Billy.
Thanks for having me.
So, Billy, you're part of a family-run, a local agency. I think that's really great that you reached out here. So, thanks for setting that up. And then just kind of, I think this is kind of a story that we know of in the insurance industry, but maybe we just don't really have those connections or contacts to talk to someone who's done that family agency growth and just kind of that local feel of running that kind of company. So I think that's great. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
So can you just tell us a little bit about your family agency and just the location it's in and just how long has it been around, or what's kind of the structure of that?
Yeah. So my grandfather started the agency in 1953. He was by himself. It was very much, a wink and a handshake type of a thing. Auto insurance primarily. Here's a cigar. Your premium's going to be, I don't know, a couple $100, that type of thing. He ran it himself for years and years and years. My father came in the early 80s. He was doing primarily life insurance, and he decided to come on board in the P&C side with my grandfather. I started at the January of 2009 was when I started doing this. And so that's the three generations. So we've been around for almost 70 years. We're in Newton, Massachusetts, which for those of you who don't know is about 20 minutes south of Boston. You can shoot right up the road here if you catch the traffic right and shoot right into Fenway Park. But yeah, we've been in the same building, God, for about 40 years. It's thankfully been updated a little bit. But we've been kind of a fixture here for in Newton for the last 40 years or so. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really interesting way to put it, of just kind of the way like people do business has changed, over the years. Like my dad would do the saying like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, of just kind of like just a handshake and just go about it. And, I think that's just kind of the element of like trust, building trust and kind of that local area. And then just kind of like how do you, like you said, just kind of like a fixture in kind of the area, like very like well known, like how do you kind of make that brand as an agency?
It's a good question. It's not advertising because we don't do it. I shouldn't say we don't do it. We do have a little radio advertisement on a local radio station. But I would say that, and that's very recent, but for years and years, we've been a constant. We've been in this area. We've been in this exact building for so long. People just know we're here. Before Google, before the internet, before, when the Yellow Pages was a thing, before even I was born. There's an insurance agency in this area on every street corner. I mean, there's literally one right around the corner. There's one less than a mile down the road, and I'm probably missing several. Anybody can get any carrier if they work hard enough. You can get access to carriers. You have to differentiate yourself and be that fixture by standing out in a different way and without sounding salesy and corny. And every agency is going to say this, so I don't want to make us even sound that much different, but you have to focus on the customer, and you have to focus on, more importantly, the client, because we aren't really a customer based walk in off the street type of an agency. We are a client based agency, and I differentiate the two because customers will come in, they'll come out, they'll shop around, they'll look for a better rate every year. The client becomes more of a part of the family, and they trust you, and they do have that trust because they have worked with you, either whether it's longevity or you've worked together through a situation that they say, oh, I trust those people, or whatever the situation is. Clients are certainly more of a ingratiated or, ingrained into the structure of the company, as opposed to, like I said, clients. To me, a client is somebody who goes to a retail store and buys something and leaves. And we're not that. We try to build trust by not overcharging people, by being there for people when something bad happens. And, for those of you in the insurance business knows, you don't get a lot of phone calls or emails when something good happens. It's usually a claim, or my bill is too high, or questions about your policy. I mean, it's not usually like, hey, I'm just calling to let you know that things are great, and then they hang up. So if you can be there and be that calming voice during those stressful moments for these clients, then you can build that trust.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting way to kind of frame it, of like the context of the relationship that you have with either, your customer, your client, of just like where you're meeting them, or like where do they know you from, of they might just be walking by and just walk into, like you said, kind of like that storefront feel, versus like your agency, it could be maybe more of like you're in their home, they're in your home, or you're meeting at like the local restaurant, or versus like them just kind of coming to, like, I think that's kind of like a commodity then, if they're just kind of coming to, if you're advertising and they're coming to your storefront to just buy insurance, versus if you are embedded in the local area, then they're coming to you for advice, they're coming to you for your knowledge, versus just buying the product.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way of putting it. And, sometimes, for example, we'll get a call from somebody that says, hey, I'm making up the company, but we just called over to Travelers Insurance, and we were looking for somebody in our area, and they sent us to you because you were the closest person on their little fact sheet. That's Amazon, that's Geico, that's Progressive, that's online shopping. Those people aren't necessarily people that, I don't want to say warm leads, but those are people who just found you by chance. And we have time to build a relationship with them. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all, but it's the people who, hey, listen, my friends had a great experience with you. Can you help me out? As opposed to, can you get me the best price?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a big difference.
So can you kind of go back to what you were saying about just kind of like gaining market access, of like, how does it, I mean, I know like you kind of need a certain amount of premium to get like access to a carrier. Like they say you have to like, mouths to feed, like how many carriers you're appointed with, you got to feed them the premium. So like obviously you can, get more and more clients, so when you have the premium, so you can open up more doors to place it. But I think at a certain point there's also like a curve of competitiveness where you might be losing business or not able to get business because you're not appointed with a carrier. So you kind of have to, what comes first, of like, do you get enough growth that you can open up those doors to carriers, or do you get the carriers and then hope that the premium comes in line?
And it's a really good question. I don't know if there's a right answer, but I can tell you that from our standpoint, we started out as primarily a personal lines agency, and finding a way to book commercial business became impossible. And that was kind of my thing when I joined in 2009. I wanted to grow the commercial side, and our markets were very limited. It was very cookie cutter stuff. We could write an accountant's office, we could write a law office. I'm exaggerating. We could do more than that, but there wasn't much of the non-cookie cutter stuff that we could write. You kind of have to work within your parameters, because if you don't have a market for it, you don't have a market for it. There are brokerages out there that we have used to try to build a book. Say there's a specialist, and I'm not going to name names, but say there's a specialist carrier out there that specializes specifically in X, and we get a lot of X. We can go to the brokerage and say, okay, look, we want to broker this business through you. while we're trying to build our book. And then once we have enough business, you can obviously then go to a carrier and say, hey, carrier ABC, we've got this amount of business, we'd like to move it over to you. And they say, great. On the flip side, I've had several conversations with representatives from carriers that say, look, we see that you're growing. You're I'm on the younger side. I like to hope I'm on the younger side of insurance people in the industry. You're hungry, you want to grow. Like I can see that. Let's come up with some sort of plan to get you here. And some carriers will be very lenient with you. They'll say, and again, everyone's different, but they'll say, you know what, we want to get $200,000 worth of premium in 2 years, let's say. If you're at 125 and it looks like you're trying hard, we'll probably stick with you. Mm-hmm. So if you can kind of work with a representative from a carrier and feed those mouths, and they see that you're working hard, then they'll keep you.
Yeah.
And from where I stand, I tend to take more risks than I probably should. In that sense, I'll reach out to reps and say, hey, listen, I love that you guys write this. I want to be able to feed you guys this. Maybe I don't have the business right away, but if I know that I can go out and find it, I'm going to take that risk. It really is a chicken or the egg, though. There's no right answer. It's kind of, you have to feel it, I guess.
I mean, I'm not too familiar with it, but isn't there some like aggregators where like some of the smaller carriers would kind of pool, their business, pay like a fee or something to get access to the carriers, don't really have to deal with kind of that, or like maybe the pressure is a little less of getting that premium level?
Yeah, so it's almost like agencies combining. I'll date myself. It's like Captain Planet when they all put their rings together. But they have access. So if I have access to carriers A, B, and C, and then this agency has access to D, E, and F, and we all pool together, I think that's kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. I've been approached by aggregators, and I'm not putting them down, but look, I'm a creative guy. We have a really, really nice team here. We're growing really fast, and we work the way that we work, and it works. And I've always wanted to just create my own thing. And being a part of an aggregator, to me, I could be totally off base here because I don't think I stay in the conversation long enough to really hear it out, but I want to do it on my own. And I know maybe that's the toddler in me kicking and screaming and saying, no, I'll do it myself. But you're not, to answer your question, yes, that will give you access to almost every carrier if you can be a part of, some sort of group relationship. And you got to pay to get into it. And it's a whole, I don't know the details, but that's another way for sure.
Yeah. So, and then just kind of on the note of growth of, like you said earlier, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, is it you're growing by, making more money, making more premium, and then that's kind of leading to your ability to hire more people and staff and to get those carrier appointments? Or is it that you're growing in staff, anticipating the need for like new clients coming in, like anticipating that growth in advance?
It's a little of both. In some cases, I will tell you that in January 1st of 2020, it was me and my father who's working behind me on the other side of that wall. That was it. And I'll say collectively, but it's mostly my nose because he's, not out there pounding the pavement and really trying to generate new business. My nose is pressed up against the ceiling, and I needed help. So in that sense, we're at a point where we have to go find help. We've generated enough premium. We've grown from a policy count standpoint where we need more help. But then there's the other side, which you mentioned, where it's okay. We see what the future holds, and we see what the possibilities are, or the probabilities are, even more specifically, of bringing in new business. I know that by we're in January now. I know that by April, we're going to need more help. So let's just get them in here now, get more, get new staff in here, get new help in here now to help us grow, get them situated so that when we hit that point where we really needed the help and we really are growing at such a quick rate or a fast rate, they're already well established, they can do it, they're going to pick it up, and we're just going to go. So again, I hate to be vague, but you can go both ways. And there's risks both ways. I'd say the first way, the risk is my own work-life balance, but that's a whole different conversation we can have.
Yeah, so kind of on a note of like finding help, like some people might be outside of your family, and at the end of the day, like, that's your name, that's your livelihood, your business. How do you kind of find those people and also like kind of give up, a little bit of that control and just kind of, someone else answering the phone, somebody else kind of representing the company? Like, what's kind of that process of scaling?
So I'll tell you this story. So the first person we hired, and you made a really good point, giving up some of that control and trust, really, because for years and years and years, it was just from soup to nuts, whether it's a billing question or writing a policy or a claim or anything in between. I was doing it with my clients and they knew it. And so I was the point person that they would go to every single time. We hired somebody who worked at Mopre Insurance in Central Mass. And this person, I happened to meet them by chance. I would call the call center there to get billing information. And we just kind of connected a little bit to the point where I said, you know what, I can't sit in the pool. I can't sit in the on hold, because when you're doing this by yourself, anytime on the phone that you're just on hold is just, you're seeing the emails pile up. Her name was Danielle. I said, Danielle, what's your extension? Just give me your extension. So whenever I have questions, I just want to get to you. And so I just went to her for everything. And finally, when we were really, really considering hiring somebody, I said, have you ever thought about joining an agency? And she was like, as it, just so happens, yeah. Came in for an interview. This was pre-COVID. Came in for an interview, and that was it. And she was the first person we hired, and she's been here ever since. And we hired her in January of 20, and then 2 months later, the world ended, and we had to all shut down. And I will say this until I retire, maybe even longer. I'm probably not retiring, but I don't know how we would have survived without her, because I got 3 little kids at home. And me working from home during the pandemic was get up at 4, get through as much of my emails and everything as I possibly could till my kids get up, and then be a parent all day. And then when they went to bed, work until I fell asleep. And I couldn't get the stuff during the day. So she was really my rock, and still is. And so that's my first hire story. But how do we find people? We post jobs on LinkedIn, Indeed, varying degrees of success. It's also who you know. I've met people in the industry who are looking for a change. You just go find. I wish I had a secret. Sorry, guys, if you're listening, I don't have the answer. I know everybody's looking for help. I don't know. LinkedIn has been fairly good for me. I go on LinkedIn and I reach out to people and connect with people every now and then. That's kind of how we've been hiring people.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. So what does growth like kind of look like for you? Like, is it you want more locations? Is it that you want to hire more people? Like, is it that you want, to expand in a different region? But then again, like that comes to the point of then you're giving up more and more control, because you can't, be 2 places at once.
So to your point, and I didn't touch on this, and I'll bleed into your question. It took me probably 4 or 5 months to really relinquish control to Danielle. of any kind. And that's a hard thing to do. And I see with my father, because for 40 years he was in control and now I'm the one driving. And it can be hard. It can be very hard. And there, a lot of times you have to take the leap of faith, and a lot of times there's going to be mistakes because it's done a way that you wouldn't do it normally. And you have to correct those mistakes, and they're learned. You learn from them. As zen as this sounds, I apologize. I thought I turned my notifications off on my computer, so I apologize.
We're always working, Billy. We're always working.
Always working. I'm not reading them though, I promise. As zen as this sounds, you can't look at mistakes as doing something wrong. It's just you either succeed or you learn. You didn't fail. Now we're going to learn from it. Believe me, I still make them all the time. But when I first started, I was making mistakes. My father left me to go alone in the office a month and a half into starting in insurance. I knew nothing about insurance except for the fact that I had it. He went on vacation, and I'm sitting there with a template of a binder and all my passwords written down here and my usernames, and I'm just like answering the phones. Hey, listen, I'm so sorry. Hang on for 1 second, and I'm just figuring it out.
Trial by fire.
Exactly. So to answer your question, though, in terms of relinquishing control, or what does growth look like for us? Again, it was 2 people working here 2 years ago. We've grown to 10 now in the last 2 years. And so that's growth. What does the big picture look like for me? I don't want to relinquish all control. Nobody does. I don't want to, I like having my hands in everything, but I know that that's almost impossible. If I'm being very honest, what growth looks like to me is being able to exhale. I'm at a point in my life right now where, like I said, I got 3 little kids at home. And I got a family, and we're moving in August, and we've got this whole thing that we've got our daily life stressors. And I come home from work and I'm still working, and I put my kids to bed and I'm still working. And my wife and I are brushing our teeth and I'm still working. So for me, I want to go away on vacation and not have to worry about the store being closed when I get home.
Yeah.
I want to be able to turn it off at, say, 6 o'clock, even if it's just for a couple hours, and not be afraid that, a fire is going to start. And I'm working on that. And if my wife is watching, she's like, yep, he's trying, but he's not succeeding. But to me, growth is building a team, which we are, but building a team that supports one another, to the extent where if one person takes a vacation day, or if one person's on maternity leave, or if one person decides to go on vacation, the whole place doesn't crumble. And I'm not saying that happens now, but at this point, we're feeling it. When somebody, like, we have one person who, it's her birthday today. Happy birthday, Erica. And she took today off. So and we feel it that she's not here. We know that, okay, Erica's not here. So now we got to cover for Erica. Growth to me is knowing that we're good if I have to be out of the office for 2 hours on a meeting, or if somebody else is out of the office meeting with a prospective client for a couple hours. That to me is I guess where my trajectory is. When you ask about, do I want to go into different regions? Do I want to open up another branch? Maybe. We do write in Florida. We do write in New York. We write in all of New England, in several other states too, Texas for some reason. But I don't have a good answer to, do we want to open up a new branch? Yeah, sure. We've got, if we can get that big, that I would be very open to that. I think for me, it's really just building a team and building a solid team. I called Erica, who's on, happy birthday, Erica. I call her my kickstand because I'd fall over without her. I want to be a team full of kickstands. I want us all to be able to hold each other up when we need it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And it just kind of makes me wonder, like, how do, some of these generational agencies just grow like exponentially, these now, huge firms like Highland, the Gallaghers, like how do you kind of become like that franchise? And like if that's not your goal right away, how do you compete, with those bigger retailers as time goes on? Like you just keep saying no to being, bought out by, a bigger retailer, like.
So we've been asked, hey, are you looking to maybe sell the agency? We haven't been asked in a while, but we have been asked. How do we compete? We can't compete from a carrier standpoint. We've got several carriers, but not all of them. Some of these large family agencies that are now have planted their flag all over the country, they have access to everything. So when it comes to price, unless they're being lazy, which is possible, unless they're just not, checking in on their clients, they're going to win every time. So how do you compete with some of these larger agencies? Is you have to be what they're not. And if I wanted to go to a 50 location branch, a 50 location agency who's got a ton of branches and all over the country, eventually I'll get the best price, assuming that they're not just feeding certain carrier mouths, as we alluded to before. So I have to be available. And this goes back to my whole, growth thing and not being on all the time. But look, I'm emailing people at 10 o'clock at night. I get on the phone with people at 9 o'clock when they get in an accident. I'm talking to people on weekends. And I say I mean, our agency is doing this. I don't necessarily just mean, I do it too. But, I remember specifically a situation where I got a call. This was years and years ago. I got a call from the sister of a client. She was not a client of ours yet. It was on the first night of Passover, for all of you Jews out there who are watching. And I was in the middle of my Seder with my family, and I got a phone call, and she was panicking, saying our house insurance got canceled for a rental property that we have up in, I think it might have been in Newton. It was someplace in Massachusetts. So we had our Seder. This was before I had a laptop. So I drove into my office at 11 o'clock at night and I bound the policy. That's the type of stuff I got to do to compete with these other larger companies who have access to everything. That's just an example, but it's the customer service. It's the relationship piece. It's the, I'm not going to leave smaller insurance agency because they take care of me. I don't care what you guys say. These guys are my family.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. And just kind of like I know you're saying you're third generation right now, but like if you had to be that first generation now, what in 2022, like how would you start an agency if you had to start from scratch?
That's a good question. Thankfully, I haven't had to. I know people who have. It's incredibly difficult to just hang your shingle out on the door and say, hey, I'm an insurance agency, because you don't have any carriers. And I could be way off base. I would guess you'd either have to start with a company or an agency and then leave and take your book of business and then open up your own store, almost, I guess that would be one way to do it. If it were me, I'd probably look. It would probably be I'd be myself. Can't afford anything if you're not making anything. Assuming I knew the same contacts in the business, I'd probably reach out to some of the other agency owners that I've I've come to know and say, listen, I'm not looking to work for you, but I want to bring business with you, or bring business to you. Figure out a way to kind of contractually work it out with them and say, I'm going to place some business with you. I just want you to know that once I have a big enough book so that I can open up my own shop, I'm going to do that. And my guess is somebody would probably take me up on it because to them, it's free money at least for the time being. And maybe we work out a buyout or something, but I don't know. I've never been in that situation. Thankfully. I've never even thought about it. It's a really good question. And I don't know the ins and outs of how something like that would work. I can tell you that nothing would change in terms of, the customer service aspect of it, because that's how I would have to get more clients, is to serve the hell out of people, because I'm not going to have access to a lot of carriers if I'm just starting. So it would be very relational. Hey, I'm doing insurance now. Can I talk to you? Let's talk. Which is not dissimilar to how it started, when I first started doing this. I mean, I had to have a lot of guts to grow my book. And I'm not saying I'm the only one. I'm sure there are other people. This is how people start their book of business. But there's a retail store right down the street from here. I remember going into that store. I felt like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman. I went into the store and I went and grabbed a couple things off the rack of the men's section. And I walked up to this guy and I said, I got a question for you. You guys work on commission, right? He said, yeah. I said, I'll tell you what, you'll be my guy. I'll come shop here and you're going to be the guy that I find if I can take a look at your auto policy. And he did it. And he was one of my first 5 clients. And so when I went to go buy shirts and pants and stuff, I went to him.
That's clever. That is, he's probably like, who is this guy? What does he want?
I think at first he thought I was a recruiter and he was like, no, I'm good. But that was one of my first clients, David. I still have him. And so I used to walk around town and just introduce myself to local businesses. Hey, I'm Billy Smoller. Here's my card. If you need anything, let me know. Got one of my bigger clients at the time. At the time, it was doing that. So just being out there and thinking to yourself, you know what? Probably never going to see these people again. So I'll shoot my shot and see what happens.
No, I mean, I think that's an interesting way to look at it, is because at the same time, you have to build both the knowledge of, like, you actually have to know what you're doing with the insurance. You have to know, what's going on and how to answer these questions. And, like, you have to have that technical understanding to sell, or else, errors and omissions and whatever else that brings. But then you also have to build a relationship at the same time, or else, like, you don't have the work to do that will get you, more knowledge. So, like, that, I just think that's, like, it's something I think is cool to do, of, starting up like a family agency. I think that's definitely cool. I just think, like, sometimes it's like, I wouldn't really see it very practical for me, like, right now. I mean, I think it would be, like, cool and, like, definitely a challenge. I just don't really know if there's too many, kids my age who don't have any of that family connection that would, like, consider it, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, we have a producer here who very entrepreneurial. He's out there. He hustles in all aspects of life. I mean, he's one of those. I love him. He's one of those guys who I got to tell, like, listen, like, go spend time with your girlfriend. Put the phone down a little bit. But I think and I'm speaking for him, I think he's always wanted to kind of have his own thing. He's even said it to me, one day I'm gonna open up my own agency type of thing. And then I know recently he's kind of seen what I go through on a day-to-day, and it's like, what? I'm good just bringing in the business. So to your point, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, there's a lot of back-end stuff that producers and account managers and CSRs don't deal with, and they're just staying in their lane and doing what they're good at. I don't know anybody. I know one person in the last 15 years who was about my age who started their own agency, and that doesn't mean that there's not more. I just don't know them. He I think he started off with a carrier and then left and then built his own thing and then sold his business, and that's it. So I don't know how easy it would be to start from ground zero here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think with maybe like technological advancements, or just kind of like the way you can like prospect, or just kind of find, like, you don't have to just be like prospecting people in your town. You could travel, or right now I guess you don't really have to travel. You can just do like Zoom calls. Like, I don't know how specialized you would get, or how it would go, but yeah, just kind of that curve, getting over that hump of growing the renewals, and then keeping the retention, keeping that business in the door once you work so hard to win it. I think that's definitely kind of like the curve, or that upfront challenge.
It would be hard, especially if you're by yourself. I think it would be really hard to be the one who's constantly out there trying to win whatever business you're trying to get, and then service it and then keep it year over year over year. I think you're right. You touched on it a little bit. I think you'd have to be a specialist. I don't think you could be a generalist. I think it'd be very hard to be a generalist in this, to start from nothing. So that you're learning on the fly, you're prospecting on the fly, you're producing on the fly, your account man, everything is just by the seat of your pants. No thanks. I'm good doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, as we wrap up here, last question for you. Just was kind of thinking to myself here, like, if you weren't working in insurance, what would you be doing? Just kind of with that family. Like, I'm sure you're seeing your grandpa going into work, you were seeing your dad going to the office, and then I was just kind of like, was it always kind of like, oh, I'm gonna go run a family agency and work in insurance? But like, if that wasn't there, what do you think you would be doing?
Yeah. So when I went to UMass Amherst in the sports management department. So I always wanted to do, I love sports, always wanted to do something in sports. You can see a picture of Gillette Stadium behind me. But I knew I wanted to do something business related too. So sports management, there you have it. It's kind of peanut butter and jelly. I had thought of maybe doing something with like a sports agency,
Mhm.
like a sports agent at one point. I think Entourage was a big show at the time, so maybe I just was thinking about that. I'm a creative guy. I really thought I'd get into marketing at one point. I was a personal trainer at one point in my life too, so maybe I would do, if money wasn't an object, maybe I do something like that. That's a good question. I like creating. I like doing creative things. I think I probably do something in marketing. I have a lot of connections in the marketing world too. I think that's probably the route I would go. I'll stick with that.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks so much for being on, and thank you for your time. Really enjoyed talking to you, Billy. Of
Likewise, Darren. Thanks for having me.
course.